Curio here, pal. In case you didn't know, Pokemon Bang is not here forever. Now, although Nintendo didn't say that themselves, they did kinda insinuate it by saying, we recommend you move your Pokemon to home as soon as possible. Meaning that even though Pokemon didn't confirm a date for Bang to shut down, they do intend to shut it down one day in the future. So right now, which Pokemon should you be transferring from 3rd gen, 4th gen, 5th gen and up to current gen Pokemon in Pokemon Home? Let's talk about it, pal.
You cannot steal our Pokemon!
Who will save the Pokemon? Gotta save them. Gotta save them all. You can save the Pokemon. Gotta save them. Gotta save them all.
Some Pokemon have fallen under the spell of an evil organization, and you need to snag them back, make them good again, and train them for battle. Pokemon Coliseum, new for Nintendo GameCube, rated E for everyone.
Pokemon Coliseum is a RPG game based in the Orre region. Well, you see, wild Pokemon don't exist in the Orre region, so how do you actually catch Pokemon? Well, there's this team of bug catchers by the name of Team Cypher, which unlike Team Rocket, they actually get the job done. You see, Cypher would team up with Team Snag'em, another group of villains in the Orre region. Team Snag'em would use their snag machine to steal other trainers' Pokemon. These Pokemon would then be sent to Cypher's lab where they would have their hearts corrupted and then sent out and distributed to other trainers. So if you weren't part of Team Cypher or Snag'em, how would you get your hands on a shadow Pokemon? Well, those who were strong enough to become champion of a Coliseum would win themselves a shadow Pokemon. But since we, the protagonists, were part of Team Snag'em at one point, we know exactly where their base was to infiltrate the Snag'em hideout and start our own Pokemon journey by stealing Pokemon. There are a total of 48 shadow Pokemon in Pokemon Coliseum. And with the power of the snag machine, we are able to capture all 48 of these shadow Pokemon. You see, in Pokemon Coliseum, you're actually able to catch one of the Johto starters early game. Or should I say, still a Johto starter. This was a really cool thing to see, especially being that this was the only legit way to get yourself a Johto starter in Generation 3 at the time. Not only were you able to capture Shadow Quilava, Shadow Bayleaf, and Shadow Croconaw, but you were also able to capture Shadow Suicune, Shadow Entei, and also Shadow Raikou. And let's not forget about our pseudo-legendaries as well, like Metagross and Tyranitar. But what are you to do after you capture a Shadow Pokemon? Well, you purify it. So how do you purify a shadow Pokemon? Well, there's a process and there's many options, but they're all pretty annoying. Depending on the Pokemon, the process of purification could take a very long time, pal. The simple way of purification is just battling with your shadow Pokemon. Each time you battle with your shadow Pokemon, the shadow gauge does drop a little bit. There's also a chance that when battling with your shadow Pokemon, it will go into a mode called Hyper Mode. Hyper Mode is a process where your shadow Pokemon just gets really emotional, just acts out of character. The good thing is, when this Pokemon uses Shadow Rush, it has a 95% chance of landing a critical hit each time. The bad thing is, this Pokemon might attack you or even your other Pokemon or even itself. So your best option is just to call the Pokemon's name, and when you do that, it speeds up the purification process, so why not? You can also buy scents at the Pokemart to like massage your Pokemon, but I just feel like that wastes time and just not really worth it in my opinion, pal. But if you're getting really impatient and you want to purify your shadow Pokemon right now, well, you could do that as well. There is an item in the game called the Time Flute, and the Time Flute calls Celebi himself to purify your Pokemon. Stop talking! You actually have Celebi come down to your Pokemon, float around it for a little bit, and purify it. But remember, you only have 3 of these Time Flutes per save file, so use it carefully on which Pokemon you want to purify. But then there's one more way, and it's my favorite way. The controller glitch. If you go to a gate village and go to this corner right here, your controller will glitch and make it seem like you're actually walking to purify your Pokemon. You go to sleep and wake up and your Pokemon are now purified. Very easy, very simple, and also, you were asleep. It's the original Pokemon sleep. It's the best way to purify, and it's the only way in my opinion, pal. Once you do purify your Pokemon, it will be awarded the National Ribbon. A ribbon awarded for overcoming difficult challenges. And when you do send this Pokemon out in a Generation 8 or 9 game, it will say the Pokemon's name followed by the Triumph. But in my most honest and fair opinion, I feel like this should say the former Shadow Pokemon when you send this Pokemon out, not the Triumph. I get what they're going for here, but them saying the former Shadow Pokemon instead would let people know instantly, oh, that Pokemon's from Pokemon Coliseum. Cool, you know, but now it's just the Triumph, and I feel like it's just not fitting for that ribbon in my opinion. But one thing I do love about this ribbon is that it turns your Pokemon into an event Pokemon. When trying to trade this Pokemon into the GPS, it will not work. That's because the National Ribbon is now an event ribbon. Now, for whatever reason you would want to put your Shadow Pokemon into the GTS is beyond me, but if you still want to trade your Shadow Pokemon, you can trade them in-game, but you cannot trade this Pokemon in the Pokemon Home GTS. But one of these 48 Shadow Pokemon are not the only Pokemon you should be transferring to Pokemon Bank. You see, after you capture and purify all 48 Shadow Pokemon, you're now able to get yourself a legendary Pokemon with a little bit of work and effort. You see, Pokemon Coliseum had their own version of a battle tower called MT Battle. And what exactly is MT Battle? Well, it's a 100 battle challenge. You heard me right, pal. 100 battle challenge. But don't worry, it's not complicated at all. In fact, it's very easy, it just takes a lot of time. But if you want to be a true Pokemon master in your region, then go to battle mode and complete the 100 battles without switching any of your Pokemon to get yourself the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh. Now, even though you can't switch your Pokemon, you can bring any legendary Pokemon you would like, but just remember that the Pokemon that you do battle will be matching your highest leveled Pokemon. So if you have a level 100 Groudon on your team, well, everyone else's Pokemon are going to be level 100. Again, this challenge isn't really hard at all, it just takes a lot of time. And that's exactly why I'm kind of disappointed in this Ho-Oh. You see, this Ho-Oh doesn't have your OT. It has the OT of Mattle, short for MT Battle. Imagine capturing and purifying all 48 Shadow Pokemon, and then going to MT Battle and battling 100 times just to unlock a legendary Pokemon that doesn't even have your OT. It seems like a slap in the face to me personally. But that doesn't take away the fact that this Ho-Oh is a very rare Pokemon, and only the trainers that completed the MT Battle got this Pokemon legit. So if you did get this Ho-Oh, pat yourself on the back, pal, you're a Pokemon master. Now, what if I told you that Ho-Oh is not the only reward you get for completing MT Battle? That's right, if you complete MT Battle in story mode, every Pokemon in your party will be rewarded the Earth Ribbon, a ribbon rewarded for winning 100 battles in a row. And if you were to send this Pokemon out with this ribbon in any Generation 8 or 9 game, it will say the following Pokemon's name followed by the 100 times victorious. Unfortunately, I feel as though this ribbon should also be changed when sending a Pokemon out. It should be saying the MT Battle champion in my opinion, not the 100 times victorious, but I'm gonna let this one slide, pal. And just like the National Ribbon, the Earth Ribbon also makes your Pokemon an event Pokemon, meaning you can't trade a Pokemon with this ribbon on the GTS system. And the best part is, any of the original 386 Pokemon from Generation 3 games can get this ribbon as long as they are in your party when challenging MT Battle. And if you ask me, that's a lot of Pokemon to choose from to send from your GameCube all the way to Pokemon Home. But we're not done yet. There is another mythical Pokemon you can get in Pokemon Coliseum. But I'm sad to say it's gonna cost you a lot of money if you want this Pokemon. You see, Pokemon Coliseum actually had a bonus disc. Not only was it used to promote the new Pokemon movie Jirachi the Wishmaker, but it also gave you a Jirachi. So if you wanted to get your hands on a legit Jirachi, all you needed was this disc and also a copy of Pokemon Ruby or Sapphire. And with the power of a LAN cable, you were able to connect your Game Boy to your GameCube and get yourself a Jirachi in any save file of Pokemon Ruby or Sapphire. Just make sure you had an open slot on your team in any Pokemon Center. But unfortunately, this Jirachi will not have your OT, but it will be holding a Salic Berry, a very rare berry in Generation 3 games. Now, for all my shiny hunters out there, you can shiny hunt this Jirachi, but I think it's very delusional to shiny hunt a Pokemon that will not have your OT. But if you want to go for it, pal. I will not ever shiny hunt for a Pokemon that will not have my OT. Sorry, not sorry, pal. Again, this bonus disc is going to cost you right now on eBay. They are selling the case alone for $100. Yes, $100 for a case for a bonus disc. But honestly, that's up for you to decide if it's worth it or not. And finally, the last Pokemon you can get from Pokemon Coliseum will be Celebi. But getting Celebi is also going to cost you, and not only money, but time. You see, to get Celebi, you actually have to beat the Japanese version of Pokemon Coliseum. And not only beat it, but purify all 48 Shadow Pokemon again. And it doesn't stop there. You also need a Japanese version of Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ruby, Emerald, or Sapphire to transfer the Celebi over to. The good thing is, you can get yourself a Generation 3 Pokemon cartridge from around $30 to $40, so it doesn't cost you that much, but it's still gonna cost you around $150 to $200 to get the Celebi disc. But again, that is up for you to decide if it's worth it or not. But that's enough for Pokemon Coliseum. On to the next game.
Commanded from the shadows, in a plot to rule the world. Prepare to unravel the mystery of Shadow Lugia. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness is coming. You can place a deposit to reserve your copy now and get a free Nintendo GameCube skin. Experience the extra dimension of an all-new RPG adventure. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, only for Nintendo GameCube, rated E for everyone.
Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness is the sequel to Pokemon Coliseum. This game is also based in the orre region. Following the events of Pokemon Coliseum, XD takes place 5 years later. And of course, the villains Team Slifer has returned to get their lick back. And there has been a few changes between the two games. In Pokemon Coliseum, there were a total of 48 Shadow Pokemon. In Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, there is now a total of 83 Shadow Pokemon. And some of these Shadow Pokemon consist of the legendary bird trio like Zapdos, Articuno, and Moltres. And of course, more pseudo-legendaries like Dragonite and Salamence. You also have your version exclusives such as Magmar, Electabuzz, Growlithe, Vulpix. You even have the Safari Zone track stars themselves, Chansey and Kangaskhan. You even had the Time Flute Maniac Snorlax. This was great for Pokemon Emerald players that didn't have access to any of the other Generation 3 games. They had all their exclusives right here in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. But of course, we get the greatest Shadow Pokemon of them all, Shadow Lugia, aka XD001. Now, although we have more access to Shadow Pokemon in XD, we actually cannot shiny hunt any of these Pokemon, unlike in Coliseum. But technically speaking, you still can shiny hunt in XD. You see, wild Pokemon didn't exist in Coliseum in the orre region, but 5 years later, Pokemon started to appear in the wild. With the help of Pokespots, you can now find wild Pokemon like Hoppip, Phanpy, Surskit, Zubat, Aaron, Wooper, Sandshrew, Gligar, and even Trampinch. And all these Pokemon, of course, have a chance of being shiny. But these are not the only Pokemon that are not Shadow Pokemon that you can get in Pokemon XD. You see, if you actually battle MT Battle in this game, you actually can get yourself any of the starters from the Johto region. And not only will these starter Pokemon have egg moves, but they also will have their elemental hyper beam moves as well, like Frenzy Plant, Hydro Cannon, and Blast Burn. But there are also a few more Pokemon in this game that you can get that are not Shadow Pokemon. When you purify your Shadow Togepi, you have a chance to trade that Togepi for an Elekid in-game. This Elekid will be level 20 and will be nicknamed Zap Wrong. And of course, this Elekid will know the egg moves, Cross Chop, Fire Punch, and Ice Punch. But there's already a Shadow Electabuzz in this game. Why would you trade your Shadow Togepi for this Elekid? Well, if you want to breed easier, there's your chance to do that. And also, this Elekid actually will be really rare because no one will have access to this Elekid anymore. And also, if you did play Pokemon Coliseum, then you already have the Shadow Togetic, so it really doesn't matter. But if you want to keep your Shadow Togepi, I understand that too. And also, depending on which wild Pokemon you catch at the Pokespot, if you do give them to Duking, he will give you some of his egg move Pokemon as well, like Meditite, Shuckle, and Larvitar. All of these Pokemon will have the OT Duking, just like the puzzle he gave you in Pokemon Coliseum. But honestly, the one Pokemon you should be focusing on in this game is Lugia. After that, go crazy, have fun, and go wild, pal. My Shadow Lugia is currently in my Pokemon Violet right now, including my Shadow Quilava and also my Shadow Pidgeot. And I can tell you with full confidence, it feels really good to get these Pokemon from the GameCube all the way to your Nintendo Switch. It's a great feeling, and also, it's really an experience. But now it's time for some trivia, pal. Although Pokemon like Glaceon, Leafeon, and Sylveon weren't introduced until later generations, you can still get these Pokemon with GameCube ribbons. If you wait to evolve your Eevee, you can then evolve your Eevee in Generation 4 to a Glaceon or Leafeon and have a GameCube ribbon. If you were to wait to evolve your Quilava, then you could also have a Hisuian Typhlosion with the GameCube ribbon as well. These are also rare Pokemon because you will no longer be able to do this once Pokemon Bank shuts down, meaning that this is your one chance to get these type of marks on these rare Pokemon. How cool is it to have a Glaceon that wasn't even introduced until Generation 4 have a GameCube ribbon? And this could work for any Generation 3 Pokemon that later has an evolution. Anyways, pal, that's it for the rare GameCube Pokemon that will soon cease to exist once Pokemon Bank shuts down. If this video did help you, please leave a like, and also don't subscribe, it gives me anxiety. Smell you later, pal.